And just like that, the boys are back. Really, the boy is back in episode 21. And it's that segment that seems to be getting the most attention from all of you guys, and a bunch of messages flooding our inboxes just about, the joy that you guys have listening to other people who share your experiences, or, listening to the human side of playing the quarterback position and ultimately having to deal with adversity. That is the segment of the quarterback in the toughest situation of the week. As we looked around the country, obviously DJU is facing something really tough over there at Florida State, but we talked about him earlier in the season, and right now I think we wanted to pour our attention into a little bit of a different scenario. And that different scenario goes to Jaxson Dart at Ole Miss. And the reason being just that I have felt on multiple Saturdays what I know Jaxson Dart felt this Saturday at home in Oxford as the number 6 team in the country, going up against a Kentucky team that, while they played Georgia tough, is a team that on paper had no business beating the Ole Miss Rebels. So when you think about how something like that happens, or you think about why I wanted to include Jaxson Dart this week as that person, and hopefully this should be a little bit more uplifting because, Jaxson has a lot out in front of him. He didn't even play that poorly, but again, you're the quarterback of a team that, from a talent standpoint, from a momentum standpoint, from an at-home SEC matchup standpoint, you got to win that football game against Kentucky this past week, and they weren't able to. And the events of the game and the circumstance of the game leads to one of those sleepy Saturdays that I've experienced multiple times, unfortunately, as a quarterback, where you kind of just at the end of the game look around and go, did that really just happen? And the reason that a game presents itself like that is you're shocked. You're shocked. And there can be a multitude of different reasons why you get shocked. So let me kind of lay out what I think happened Saturday for Ole Miss, what Jaxson Dart was thinking during the game, how all that went down, and what this now looks like moving forward. Okay, first, going into the season, Ole Miss was a really, really good team, is a very good team, with a lot of returning talent on a team that was already up there in the top 10, 15 teams in the country last year. Then they went out in the transfer portal, and they spent some big money. And they acquired some guys, especially in the trenches for them, that were going to be major assets to completing this football team and making them what many preseason said would be a national championship contender. Then they've gone out there, and while they haven't been challenged just because they haven't played a lot of great teams yet to this point, like, they have done what they needed to do. They have absolutely ran teams out of the stadium in the first few weeks of the season. And Jaxson Dart, Lane Kiffin, when you put a great offensive coordinator and a really good quarterback together with weapons, they've been a juggernaut throughout the entire season. So if I told you that they were going to only score 17 points this past weekend against Kentucky at home with an offense that typically is up-tempo, you'd be like, no way, no way. Well, then it gets even crazier. The game starts, and Ole Miss gets the ball. Ole Miss gets the ball and goes straight down the field and scores a touchdown. This is a very interesting thing that happens at times in games, NFL, high school, college, everywhere, where you are the team that is expected to win. You guys expect yourselves to win. Whether anyone wants to admit it or not, there's a bit of an undertone for Jaxson Dart and Ole Miss that's like, we're going to kick their ass on Saturday. You go straight down the field and you score, and oftentimes the team will take a little bit of a deep breath. Meanwhile, that Kentucky team is over there going, this season has not gone the way we want. We just gave up a touchdown on that first drive. They're yelling at each other over on the sidelines. Stoops is getting in their ass going, we need to clean this up, make a couple adjustments. So you have one team on that sideline who's pissed off, that is saying, this is not going to happen anymore. You have another team that goes, here we go, baby. We're about to kick their ass. 7-0. Final score of this game, guys, was 20-17. So you look at Ole Miss, one of the most high-powered offenses in the country, only scored 10 points in over 3.5 quarters after that initial drive. That's where you get into, okay, well, how does that happen? How does that happen? Well, they score that first drive. The rest of the first half, punt, 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 2 plays into the end of the half. Well, that's a couple different things going on here. One, Kentucky did a hell of a job of keeping them off the field. So Ole Miss in the first half got the ball 4 times. 4 times. The average number of possessions typically in a college football game, you're going to get about 14 to 18 touches. To only get 4 in the first half means that Kentucky was A, moving the ball a little bit, and B, they were controlling the clock and time of possession. Well, for a high-flying offense in Ole Miss, you want the ball. You want to be on the field. And through the first 3 games of the season, you had been on the field. And now Kentucky's milking clock a little bit. Then you get the ball back and you go 3 and out. They milk the clock a little bit. You get the ball back. And I've been that guy. I said, sleepy Saturday. Sleepy Saturday. You're sitting there on the sidelines and you're like, dude, just want to get the ball back, bro. You don't get cold, but it's like you're in it when you're getting the ball every 3-5 minutes. With TV timeouts and the way the game was playing out, like they weren't touching the ball for 8 to 10 minutes at a time. So you're standing over there on the sidelines just going, dude, just get me out there for that next drive. Get me out there for that next drive. Then you go 3 and out a couple times, and then you're like, fuck. You just haven't been able to establish a rhythm. Meanwhile, as you sit there for the first time all season and go, we haven't been able to establish a rhythm, the other sideline is getting juiced because they're in a game on the road with the number 6 team in the country. Then you go into halftime. And at halftime, you're sitting there talking to each other, and you're like, we're going to get in a rhythm, guys. Here we go. Like, we just need to get the ball. We need to get going again. Like, and you're craving that opportunity to shift the momentum in the football game. Get the ball, start the half, and you go on a drive, a good drive, and you kick a field goal. So you're like, all right, we're in good shape. We're in good shape. But that clock, right, is running down. Just the opportunities in the game, in a close game, to make sure that you pull away as the better team, it's getting shorter. And we feel that. We feel that. You come out the next drive, and you guys fumble on offense. You fumble. Then you score a touchdown to take the lead. And that is right on the fringe there of getting into the fourth quarter. So you have the lead. You're at home. You feel good about that. But then Kentucky answers. They answer. So now you're sitting in a barn burner. You're sitting in a street fight. And in that street fight, you're like, we need this. 3 and out. Oh, no. We're probably only going to get the ball back 2 more times in this game. And right now, we're only up 4. You're sitting there at 17-13, and you're like, dude, and you start to feel it. The stadium starts to get a little eerie. They're not as juiced as they usually are. You start to think to yourself, okay, I'm good. I just need to make sure that I execute when I have that. It is a completely opposite feeling than Ole Miss had felt at any point in their first few games of the season. Then you punt again. Now you're only going to get the ball back 1 more time. And Kentucky goes on that drive. They score that touchdown. It's 20-17. You haven't been in a rhythm the entire day. And that sleepy Saturday is on top of you. You're 1 of 9 on 3rd down. 1 of 9 to this point on 3rd down. 3rd downs and turnovers are a huge indication of the direction that the game goes. So now you go, we need to make this happen now. Again, a position that Ole Miss had not been in up until this point throughout the season. You go on a little bit of a drive. You set yourself up in field goal position to hit a 45-yard field goal to go into overtime, and they miss the field goal. So for Jaxson Dart, did he play bad? No, he didn't play bad. He didn't play bad. So why is he the toughest situation of the week? Because now we're talking about expectation. We're talking about the way the season laid out. And we're talking about now what this means for the rest of his season. You can't lose that game to Kentucky. You lose that game, and now I look at the rest of their season moving forward, and I didn't even put Arkansas on here, but you have South Carolina this week, LSU the next week, Oklahoma after that, and Georgia. Well, what's interesting about the new era of college football and the playoff is for a team that's as good as Ole Miss, like, you really know we can probably get into the playoff with 2 losses. Probably. You're obviously trying to go undefeated. But you cannot drop a game like that against Kentucky. You can't. Because now just think about what happens. Now you have to beat South Carolina. Now LSU, you're playing against a team with 1 loss that's a really good football team, and both you guys are playing for your playoff hopes. Then you play Oklahoma, who knows by then their offense may wake up, and then you got Georgia. So now Ole Miss is sitting there in a season where they're the alphas and they're the front runners and they feel really good about where they're at, and Jaxson Dart's playing loose and really confident and Lane's dialing it up on offense, and you feel like this is the team that's going to win that national championship, to, oh shit, just a little bit of doubt, a little bit of we have to. And when that little bit of doubt and a little bit of we have to come into play, it starts to affect a little bit of the way that you guys play. How does that happen? It's more psychological than anything else. You're playing with house money on top of the world because you're undefeated, you're number 6 in the country, and you're like, everybody's got to beat us. You drop a game that you weren't expected to drop. Now, we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. We need to make sure is a very different narrative and a very different play style than they got to beat us. Very different. So Jaxson Dart, moving forward, is going to have to play with a little bit of a different mentality because whether he wants to admit it or not, we're on the ropes here. We need to win from here on out. Again, we need is different than we get to kick your ass today. Well, then you look at some of the narrative out of the game. Nobody's going to chastise Jaxson Dart when he played pretty well and they just weren't able to kind of get into a rhythm. But he will. He will. So what did Jaxson Dart do? He called a meeting on Sunday with his team at Ole Miss. Quotes, "It really opened our eyes, the game against Kentucky. We're not the big dogs anymore. We have to get back to the groundwork. Go 1-0 every day, reset, and look at things different. We're not the big dogs anymore." Meaning you believed you were the big dog prior to that. So the big dog just got bit. And now we're not the big dogs anymore. Why aren't you the big dogs anymore, bro? You guys just didn't play well. Why aren't you the big dogs? That's what you said, not what anyone else said. Again, just that little bit of doubt that starts to creep in. We have to get back to the groundwork. A big indication in people's lives about the way that they see life and whether they're leading with gratitude or not is, do you get to or do you have to? And after a loss to Kentucky, there it is, his quote. We have to get back to the groundwork. Bro, you're good. You're playing really well. You didn't play poorly against Kentucky. You guys just as an offense didn't play as well. We have to get to groundwork. We have to go 1-0 every day. We have to reset and look at things different. There's a little bit of undertone there of panic, right? And this is what creeps into our head. Think about how different that narrative is. They're rocking and rolling undefeated, number 5 in the country. And they're going into South Carolina, who they should take care of. And then it really starts with LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia. Another quote from one of his teammates. I feel like Jaxson is one of the guys on the team who definitely took it the hardest. He's the one who made sure we had that meeting as a team on Sunday. He kind of led the meeting and talked things over. This week, I feel like he's got something in store. We're going to do really good, I feel like. Again, I anticipate that as well. I anticipate Jaxson Dart answering the bell. I anticipate Jaxson Dart coming out aggressive with a little bit of just shit in his neck because he wants to make sure that the sleepy Saturday never happens again. So I think he'll have a little bit more urgency. But he's the one who made sure we had the meeting on Sunday. He led the meeting, and he definitely took it the hardest. Again, that's different than the superhero that everybody saw the first few weeks of the season. Because now the superhero has some urgency to him. And the superhero is admitting we're not the big dogs anymore. Okay? It changes the way you take the field. Something that I talk about all the time, right? With Tim Tebow's Florida teams or Vince Young's Texas team or Joe Burrow's LSU football team. It's like much of the time the team that they're playing against is beat before they ever enter the stadium. And the reason is because there's an aura and a confidence amidst those guys that they don't even believe they can lose. Nick Saban and his dynasty run there at Alabama, like they knew that they were going to beat your ass. Ole Miss, the first few games of the season, had that feeling. We're going to beat your ass. We're ready for Georgia and we're ready for Alabama. We're ready for the big dogs. This is the year. You lose to Kentucky. Now you're back to, we got to get back to groundwork. We're not the big dogs anymore. And anybody knows it's a lot easier to play quarterback when you haven't had that chink in your armor yet. Well, his chink in his armor just happened. Here's Jaxson Dart again. We had an offensive meeting Sunday morning following that. We kind of talked things over, how we felt things went negative, what we could have done better, just more of how we're going to do things going forward and what we can do different because we don't want that result to ever happen again. It's where I talk to my guys all the time about Derek Jeter, my favorite baseball player ever, says you do the things you think about last. Well, you went from we're seeking a national championship to now we don't want that result to ever happen again. The difference there. One is an up or towards value, an opportunity to go win a national championship. The other one is we don't want that to happen again. That's fear. There's a difference in how you feel at this position when you think about those two things. The goal and the objective is to take a loss, like Ole Miss lost this past week to Kentucky, and to make the corrections, but to still feel that you're that same team, that you're the best in the country. That confidence can't be faked. And that confidence is something that they definitely had all offseason and that they definitely had through the first few games of the season. Now, those quotes sound a little different, right? Another one, there's a lot of things we need to improve on. We've got a lot more opportunities, so we're just going to continue. This is going to be a wake-up call, and it's going to be a season-defining game for us. How we answer that will have to do with the direction of how the season goes. We got to buck up. We got to. Feels like weight. Feels like expectation. So for Jaxson Dart, you're looking at one of the quarterbacks who is wanting to be in that top 4 or 5 guys in the NFL draft next year. One of those guys who came back at Ole Miss with a team who chose to come back for the most part to compete for a national championship that just lost to a team that had a losing record before heading into Oxford. And now that team that had the aura of good luck trying to beat us, I don't care who you are, knows that they just lost to an inferior football team. That now makes you human. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen Rocky IV. We're entering a generation that may not have seen the Rocky movies, but there's the big Russian, Ivan Drago, and he had never been beat before. And he even ended up killing, in a fight, one of Rocky's best friends, Apollo Creed. Then Rocky says, I'm going to fight him. I'm going to fight him. And everyone calling Rocky crazy, Rocky crazy, Rocky crazy. Well, the reason I'm telling the story is because Rocky goes into the ring with the Russian fighter. And up until that point, the Russian fighter had absolutely crushed everybody he had fought before. And he's killing Rocky in the first 2 rounds. Round 3. Round 3, Rocky gets backed in the corner. He's getting pulverized. And he throws one big shot, one hook. And they go, he's cut, and it's a bad cut. Essentially, Drago was bleeding from his face. And up until that point, he had never bled before. And that changed the entire complexion of the fight. Not only did it make Rocky believe this guy's human, it also planted the seed of doubt inside of the undefeated Russian. And I see Ole Miss and Jaxson Dart in this scenario as that Russian. They now know they bleed. They now know that on any Saturday, they can get beat. Now, that could be of huge benefit to them because they look, as they're going to do, and they take personal inventory over what happened this past Saturday, and they make the corrections, and they're a better team moving forward. That can absolutely be the case. This episode isn't doomsday. This episode is not Jaxson Dart is screwed the rest of the season. This episode is Jaxson Dart is thinking about some shit that he hasn't been thinking about up until this point. So what's the objective? Or as I was a quarterback coach in the SEC, like, what would I tell Jaxson Dart? I would tell him, yo, we just got punched. And we got punched in a way that we weren't prepared for. So what we need to do is we need to ask ourselves why we got punched. Did we do anything on the front end headed up into the game that was overly confident? Maybe did we not focus on things the way we needed to focus on them? Or was it truly just a schematic issue within the course of the game? Whatever that is, we need to fix that. We need to understand what it was, whether it was personal, whether it was unit, whether it was team, whatever it was. We need to fix that. Once we fix that, we need to understand that last week is gone. See you later. And we need to take the field with the same aura and the same confidence that we had going into last week as we move forward through the rest of the season. If we go forward worried about this happening again, it will happen again. So we have to really take inventory of those mistakes we made. So for any high school quarterback out there, for any coach that's coaching their high school or college quarterback out there, we have to really, really peel back all the layers, just as Jaxson Dart's quote said, and we have to really, really make the corrections that we need to know within ourselves, okay, we're not going to let that happen again. But once we've done that, if it's true, if we feel that we've gone through that entire process, we got to let go of it. Because if we carry that into the weeks moving forward, we're going to operate from a place of fear. Again, it's not going to be dominated by fear, but that doubt's going to be there. You think Jalen Milroe in Alabama got any doubt that they're going to kick the shit out of everyone on their schedule the rest of the season? You think Quinn Ewers in Texas got any doubt that they're going to kick the shit out of everyone they play the rest of the season? Even in a loss, you think Carson Beck and what Georgia did in that second half has any doubt that they're going to kick the shit out of everybody that they play the rest of the season? That's who you're playing against. That's who, if you want to win a national championship, if you want to compete and potentially play in the SEC championship, you're going to have to win out. You're going to have to win out. And the mentality that you take the field with and restoring your own confidence only comes through acknowledging everything that just happened, asking yourself why all of that happened, making the corrections and knowing that you've made the corrections so that those things won't happen again, and then letting it go. And coming back to yourself and your unit and your team and saying, we are going to kick the shit out of everybody on the rest of our schedule. And it's a tough thing to do after you lose a game like that to Kentucky. So there's this balance of looking at the week kind of like an outlier, like that was kind of a weird, sleepy Saturday. But then also, we were 1 for 10 on third down, and something happened that didn't allow us to play at our true capacity, or we would have beat their ass. So I think for you quarterbacks, parents of quarterbacks, coaches that are out there, I think that that's a very interesting psychological way to handle adversity, right? Is for Jaxson Dart. Knowing like, yeah, we have to accept what happened. We have to accept what happened. then not only do we have to accept it, we have to analyze it. We have to analyze ourselves, what we did leading up to it, what happened during it, how things went wrong. We have to learn from each one of those things. If we do a very, very thorough job of doing that, we'll be able to turn the page. And this thing will make Ole Miss a much better football team moving forward. What many people do, though, is they don't ever look at everything. Because what they just lost perceptively is something that they don't want to explore. If you don't explore it, you're going to end up hoping that it doesn't happen again. And if you hope that it doesn't happen again, just like my man Derek Jeter said, it'll probably happen again. So Jaxson Dart, hell of a quarterback, having a really good season. Just had a tough, sleepy Saturday this past week in terms of just the way that the game laid out. And now those quotes sound a whole lot like they got something to lose. And the best way to fix it is to come out there on Saturday and kick the shit out of South Carolina and get that juice back. So I would anticipate and expect watching an Ole Miss football team playing with a hell of a lot of urgency come Saturday. And even Juice Williams, I believe, the receiver who was bought from Ole Miss, from South Carolina that went to Ole Miss, coming back to South Carolina. There's going to be some stuff going on in that stadium this week. And that'll be exciting to watch, and I'm super excited to watch how Jaxson Dart responds off this. So I hope that helps a bunch of you quarterbacks and a bunch of guys that are listening to this, because it's tough when you take that sucker punch in a game that you never expected to lose, and now you got to face it. But the only way to become what you know you're capable of becoming and allow this thing to serve you moving forward is to face every single aspect of it, learn from it, grow, show yourself that you're not going to make those mistakes again in practice, and then let it go. And I'm super curious, as I know you guys are now, to watch Jaxson Dart this week and see if he answers the bell in that way. So drop any questions, any thoughts in the comments, any other situations that you think that we should cover moving forward. But either way, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Jaxson Dart, baby. Let's go watch a hell of a football game this Saturday, and we'll see you next week.